All right. Okay, sorry about that. Little technical difficulty. It's a windy morning here in Atlanta, and the power just went out in my home, but we are back on. We are good to go, so we're going to get rolling. Sorry about that. Wanted to just pick right back up here where I was, and just once again welcome everybody in. If you have not, please check out our website, foodwellalliance.org. You're going to learn more about what we do to support Atlanta's local food system. Really our vision is an equitable local food system here in Metro Atlanta that everybody can participate in. And really, we see our role at Foodwell Alliance, our mission to provide resources and support specifically to local growers who are working in that local food system to connect and build healthier communities. So once again, I'm Bobby Farmer. I'm part of our Resource Center team at Foodwell Alliance. That is my email address, bobby@foodwellalliance.org. Feel free to reach out to me at any point, after today's webinar, throughout the application cycle and process for this grant opportunity specifically, if you have questions, as well as if you have any questions about some of the other things we do here at Foodwell Alliance. So we are here, we'll say the second half of October. So maybe some of y'all's gardens at home or in the communities are looking like this. Lots of multicolored brassicas, the greens, the kales, the collards, the cabbages, all those beautiful things. It's been so dry. Also been quite warm, and then except for perhaps this morning when you woke up, maybe you're experiencing some of these little cabbage worms that love going to town on these tender young brassicas. And I'm sure everybody felt those temperatures waking up this morning. So the thing I remember, as long as if you don't have access to cover up some of these things on some of these cold mornings, give them a good water, make sure they're drinking plenty, because that's something that those greens will absolutely respond to, help them survive some of the shock that we're also experiencing after we were in the 80s this weekend, but waking up to some cool temperatures this morning. All right, we're going to move on, get into business, but I know I was in company that would appreciate some pictures of some lush veggies. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about Foodwell Alliance, who we are, what we do. We were founded just in 2015 in partnership between the James M. Cox Foundation and the Atlanta Community Food Bank, with a vision and purpose to operate a little bit different space than, say, for example, a traditional food banking model, understanding that there already was a lot of great urban agriculture, a lot of great work being done in Atlanta, in Metro Atlanta, around growing food together. And we kind of came into this space of being an organization that can provide some support, to the organizations out here doing this work of growing the food right here where we live. And so that's the space we've been occupying. Once again, I hope you'll check out our website to learn more about some of the things that we do. We're actively in what we call our city agriculture planning process. We've worked with the cities of East Point and Alpharetta. We're searching for a new city to get engaged with, to work through a plan for how to prioritize and protect and support urban agriculture activities. So I hope you'll please check out some of that information. We provide resources as well, specifically to community gardeners and to local farmers. We have some resources that kind of fit in on both sides of those growers that are doing work in the city. We also have some neat and engaging opportunities, whether that's workshops and events to bring people closer to this work. Many of you know of or have attended our annual Soil Fest opportunity, usually held in early May. We also have a neat program we call Compost Connectors, where we're bringing kids, school age kids into the garden, into farms, to learn about that connection between compost, healthy soil, and healthy local food. So we believe that the food that's best for us as individuals, for our planet, but definitely for the communities right here where we live, is that food that is grown and consumed here where we're living in thriving community gardens and urban farms here in Metro Atlanta. These food growing spaces have the capability to be transformative around health, around environment, around local economy, and around building community. And it's our work to support these spaces, support the leaders that are dedicating so much time to their work, so much time in their lives to cultivating food, to building community through the growing of food right here in Metro Atlanta. And like I mentioned, we do that by coordinating dedicated resources to support these spaces, community gardens, and urban farms, as well as some of those other initiatives that I mentioned. But today is all about community gardens. And when we here at Food Well Alliance think about community gardens, we think about some of those things, some of those benefits that come from community garden spaces. So community gardens, they connect us to each other. They absolutely connect us to knowledge and skills. They connect us to healthy food. Of course, all of you know that running or maintaining or working in a community garden absolutely gets you moving. So the activity and healthy lifestyles that come from community gardens are also a really important part of what they do. They also beautify and heal our urban ecosystems, and they grow a lot of food. So we know from past community garden grant recipients or community gardens that we work with, that those spaces are reporting, growing thousands of pounds of food. And that food is going, of course, to the people that's growing it in a community garden setting, but that's also being donated sometimes through, formal relationships with food pantry partners or other community organizations, but also in informal means, through just simple donation or collaboration with people that live in and around the community where these community gardens are located. So some of the resources that Food Well Alliance does provide, outside of what we're going to be talking about here with the grants, we do provide ongoing volunteer support for community gardens. So bringing volunteers and necessary tools out to a community garden space to support with projects or activities that are going on. We offer ongoing training and workshop opportunities. A great example is our Plant, Eat, Repeat series. Some of these opportunities as well around training and supporting community garden leaders. Some of these workshops that we've held throughout this year and we will be continuing to do. Also special initiatives like our fruit tree plantings through our orchard project. The annual fruit tree sale is something that happens in February. We hope you'll tune into that, as well as the associated program called the Orchard Project, that helps plant trees at community garden and farm locations. We also, many of you also might be familiar with the compost delivery resource we do. That will be coming, of course, in winter and early spring. So stay tuned for that. That's something we've taken out of the grant making process, put it as a standalone resource, so that community gardens can request 1 or 2 cubic yards of organic compost delivered directly to their community gardens. We do that through a simple request form that will be launching a little bit later this year. We also provide some tool and mechanical assistance to community gardens, as well as some kind of what we like to think of just kind of some general community garden support. We're always here to help with some planning or some troubleshooting that you might be facing at a community garden. So these are some of the ways that we support community gardens. But I want to, of course, hone in today on our community garden grant. So the community garden grant that has been offered by Food Well Alliance has existed in some form since 2015. We've reached 174 community gardens across the Metro Atlanta area, specifically the 5-county Metro Atlanta area: Cobb, DeKalb, Clayton, Fulton, and Gwinnett. And so, we've really Yeah, I think enjoyed this important role that we occupy of providing this ongoing funding support, specifically to these community garden spaces. We know that community gardens require coordination, they require people's time, they require uh, certainly some sweat, probably some blood and tears along the way to maintain and to keep going. And this dedicated funding resource for community gardens has been what we see as an important part of helping these spaces thrive, helping these spaces along in their own development in serving community and serving each other. So we definitely have a little bit of history, of course, with this grant opportunity. And it's an opportunity for community gardens to really define their needs. We like to keep this opportunity as a space for community gardens to reflect on, what challenges they're facing, and then, of course, respond to those needs through a simple funding opportunity. So for here in 2023, we are excited to kind of bring back our community garden grant as many of us have known it, a $1,500 community garden grant, but we are also excited to offer what we're calling a second category of support under the community garden grant, which we're going to be calling our Garden Forward grant, which is a larger $10,000 opportunity. So we're going to talk about each of these opportunities a little bit, but I want to just kind of put it out there. What we are offering this year from Foodwell Alliance, specifically to support community gardens, are two categories of funding support under this year's 2023 community garden grant process. So many of you, of course, know about our garden improvement grant. That's the $1,500 grant that we have rolled out for many years now, meant to fit in, to meet some of the needs of a community garden. That's something that we've, like I say, done for some years now, and excited to continue doing that. We are, in general, able to reach a pretty large number of community gardens each year with this opportunity. But we're adding something new, and this is something we are excited about. We know that some gardens are ready to take on a little bit bigger project at their gardens. They have the capacity to implement a bigger project. They have a space and the need for something a little bit larger. So we are excited to test out a little bit larger opportunity with what we call our Garden Forward grant this year. So that's going to be a $10,000 category of support. So we're going to get into a little bit of specifics around some of these. And excited to kind of drill down. But first of all, of course, let's talk about who can apply for this grant opportunity. And this information applies to both categories of support under the 2023 Community Garden Grant, both that $1,500 Garden Improvement Grant as well as the larger $10,000 Garden Forward Grant. So all eligible community garden applicants must be located in Clayton, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, or Gwinnett counties. That is our 5-county Foodwell Alliance service area. That's kind of an area where we are a little bit bound to and where we are focusing on right now. In addition to being located in those 5 counties, let's talk about how we define and talk about community gardens. And this applies to kind of our eligibility criteria for this grant application. A community garden grant applicant, we define as having at least 5 consistent individual household members. So what we mean by that is that a community garden has to have the community. It has to have people involved. These are not, this grant is not for folks that are out there doing it by themselves, though that is absolutely important work. But this is about community gardens. And we borrow and have kind of taken on some of that criteria information from groups like the American Community Gardening Association, who also, uses that kind of at least 5 individual households working together as kind of some of the criteria. And so that's what helps us kind of think through and understand that a specific space is in fact a community garden, is in fact including members of the community in what they're doing. So we do, we acknowledge that community gardens do come in all different shapes, sizes, and types. And we have really strived over the years to make sure that this opportunity does reach kind of all the different types of community gardens that do exist out there. So in addition to being, located in the 5-county area and involving at least 5 consistent individual households, we do kind of acknowledge that there are a lot of other types of community gardens, and we're kind of open to all of those. So some of those types that you see here on the screen, like community gardens that are simply operated by a group of neighbors or community members. There are community gardens that do exist as their own registered entities, most commonly organized as tax-exempt, nonprofit organizations. There are also community gardens that are directly operated by some of those nonprofit organizations. There are community gardens that are affiliated with, supported by, or operated by public agencies or institutions. There are some gardens out there that are directly supported by, for example, a county Parks and Rec department, or one of the University of Georgia extension offices. So we are open to all of those types of community gardens as long as they're located in the 5-county area, as long as they are involving at least 5 consistent individual household members. And of course, previous community garden recipients and applicants are eligible to apply. We do kind of, I guess, pride ourselves on the fact that we do provide some funding support each year to community gardens that have received the grant before. So we certainly look at, supporting first-time applicants for this opportunity, as well as providing some ongoing support to some of the gardens that are coming back to us and applying again. So one thing I do want to note, unfortunately, we do have a little bit of a thing we like to kind of put our foot down around, and that is that this opportunity is not available for school gardens. We love school gardens. School gardens are an important part of, certainly of education, but also around an important part of this local food system that we talk about. But we want to make sure that this opportunity is honed in on and specific to supporting community gardens. There are a lot of existing resources out there for school gardens. I'm thinking through organizations like the Whole Kids Foundation, that's related to Whole Foods, Captain Planet Foundation, Teach Real School Gardenings, kidsgardening.org. Here in Metro Atlanta, in the state of Georgia, we have Georgia Organics and a lot of their farm to school work. So there are a lot of dedicated resources specifically to school gardens and school garden programming. So this grant opportunity, we like to keep it specific to the community gardens. So just to kind of hone in a little bit on that kind of existing community garden criteria, we acknowledge that there are community gardens that are brand new. There are also community gardens that we know of and have worked with here at Foodwell Alliance that have been operating in the Metro Atlanta area for 20+ years. And that's a really neat range. It's neat to see what's worked at those gardens that have been around for 20 years. It's neat to see what brand new startup gardens are trying and working with. But this opportunity is for existing community gardens. And what we mean by existing, we do mean that we are open to supporting new gardens, but there are a few things that folks need to have in place before before a grant is even really a good fit for what they're trying to do. So we define existing community gardens as meeting at least 2 of the following criteria. Has built or installed on-site community garden infrastructure, has a current documented land use agreement to be in place and operate a community garden at that location, and has engaged their surrounding community to participate, operate, be a part of that community garden, and has secured at least those 5 individual members for that garden. So, I think this criteria is quite important for gardens that are on the newer side of operation. We can acknowledge that a grant might not be the best fit for a specific garden or garden group at depending on what stage of development they are in, and it might be something where you might think this is an opportunity for you, but if you are brand new, if you're still in that stage of thinking through, I want to start a garden, some resources that are geared towards helping startup gardens might be a better fit for you than a community garden grant. I'm thinking of the American Community Gardening Association has a lot of really great, helpful information, even just posted on their website, some guides to help some of those newer community garden groups kind of work through what they're planning and visioning. So yeah, that's kind of what we use to define an existing community garden, and acknowledging that there are some resources out there, for folks that are maybe brand new, that maybe need to do a little bit of work on their own before being ready for a grant opportunity. So I do want to just take a quick pause here and mention you are more than welcome, of course, as I'm going through this information, to utilize the Q&A features here on the webinar to go ahead and type in some questions. I see some folks have already been doing that, and definitely encourage you to do that as well. As questions pop to your mind, feel free to go ahead and enter those into the question and answer function here. And we will be getting to some of those a little bit later on. So, all right, so let's kind of dive into our 2 categories of support. So as I mentioned, the 2023 Community Garden Grant has these 2 categories. One, the $1,500 Community Garden Improvement Grant. We are targeting to award 65 garden improvement grants. And this grant is something that has been used, and we continue to kind of apply this to be used for garden infrastructure, supplies, materials, tools. This has been something that we have, like I said, been able to reach over 170 community gardens with this support in the past, and we think it is an important feature or function of this grant to meet a large number of the community gardens that exist out there. This $1,500 grant is also I'd say a right-sized grant to fit into some of the size spaces that are operating out there as community gardens. This can help take on some small but really important and useful projects at a community garden. And then, of course, we have our new Garden Forward Grant category. This is a new opportunity this year. We are targeting to award 2 of these grants. So this is a $10,000 grant that should be focused on a little bit larger garden infrastructure project. Now, the request can certainly also include components like garden supplies, like materials and tools, but certainly a bulk of that request, should be focused on a specific project. So the Garden Forward Grant, will be kind of project specific. With $10,000, I think it's important for a garden to think through, what's realistic. Do a little bit of homework to do some pricing. To if you need to seek out some quotes. We definitely are excited about this opportunity, and we acknowledge and know that there are some gardens that are ready to take on a bigger project. Now, $10,000, that could be a significant irrigation upgrade. That could be a expanded seasonal protection or season extending infrastructure like a high tunnel or a hoop house. Additional lighting or safety features, upgrades to make, you know, a garden space more ADA compliant. These are some of those larger projects at a community garden space that that folks are ready to take on, that have the internal capacity to manage and implement a larger project. And we're really excited to hear kind of what folks are thinking and how this could fit in. Now, because this is a little bit of a larger project, we are here at Food Well Alliance prepared to put in some other things as well. So in addition to that $10,000 grant, we are ready to offer what will be approximately a $5,000 you know, additional in-kind support to support project implementation. So this might be some you know, additional compost delivery. This could be some support with some just additional garden materials. This could come in the form of you know, some labor assistance for project implementation. You know, that this component is gonna be, of course, determined a little bit by the project that's specific to the garden applicant. So just know that what we're looking at is essentially a $15,000 package of support with a $10,000 grant and then approximately $5,000 of additional in-kind support that Food Well Alliance would work with the garden to you know, further define and figure out what makes sense for fitting in. So we are also asking that a Garden Forward grant recipient be prepared to kind of give back as well. So we're building into this grant opportunity a requirement that whoever receives, whichever community garden receives the Garden Forward grant, that they will be holding an educational workshop or event at their garden in 2023. Now, we are not saying that particular workshop has to be about what the Garden Forward grant project is related to. We're going to be open to letting the community garden define, you know, what they want to present or what they want to, you know, educate other community gardeners about. But this will be, you know, kind of a requirement of receiving this grant. We're going to be open to, you know, discussing like timeline of when that workshop or event would happen in 2023. And, you know, we're going to be certainly communicating with the recipient to talk about this a little bit more. But as you're thinking about your application, you know, we hope that folks are also going to be thinking about what they can give back in the form of a workshop or educational event to other community gardeners. This is really our opportunity to think about how you know, these grant opportunities can also serve as networking events, as you know, building community amongst community gardeners as well. So a little bit of just kind of how these grants have been used in the past. These are just some snapshots of some of our past recipients, some things that they've shared around what they've used, what they've proposed to us, and what they've used the community garden grants for. So certainly a top item is raised bed infrastructure. So that's sometimes replacing existing raised beds. Sometimes that's you know, adding additional raised beds as a garden is trying to expand or add space for new members. Other top items of request over the years have absolutely been tools, storage sheds for those tools, signage is a big one, as well as various forms of irrigation equipment. So whether that's water catchment service systems, you know, even simple things like hoses for connecting to water, or, you know, other irrigation infrastructure. So, you know, I think our hope is that as you're getting into the application that we've put out for this opportunity, that you're thinking through some of these things around specifically, you know, what are your greatest needs? What are your current needs and challenges at the garden? Thinking through, you know, what is, what are those things that are preventing us from doing what we want to be doing best. And then, of course, I hope that folks are thinking through in advance and then communicating through the application, projects and activities that are realistic for the grant size and realistic for the capacity for what you're trying to implement. So just a little bit of an overview around the timeline for this opportunity. We are accepting applications now through November 13th. We have that application window happening now so that folks can submit applications during this fall time period so that we can then fulfill and carry out our review process to then be able to make those decision announcements early in the year. So, we have tweaked this timeline a little bit over the years and have tried our best to match this up so that the resources are getting to community gardens at a time that makes the most sense for implementing projects or implementing elements of those grant requests to best meet the timeline needs of a community garden. So we're going to be working hard, through the early winter time to get those decisions out to folks, by the end of January, maybe early February, but we're definitely committed to and focused on, carrying out a thorough but timely review process. The other thing that is important to note, if you do receive a community garden grant, whether it is the $1,500 garden improvement grant, whether it's the $10,000 garden forward grant, there is some reporting requirements related to the grant. So what that will mean is that actually around this time of year, so our 2022 recipients are actively working on these project reports right now. But we do offer we do put out a simple kind of report that allows folks to reflect back on what they've implemented, what they've accomplished, and how the grant funds and the projects that they defined are supporting their work. So just as you're thinking about applying, if you're a first-time applicant, just kind of know that we don't set this up to be an overburdensome reporting process, but we of course do have a reporting component that's attached to these grant opportunities. All right, I do see some great questions coming in. So yeah, we'll be getting to some of those Q&As here in just a minute. All right, so how does my garden apply? So I think, a great and helpful website that I hope you've all been to. If you have not yet, go to our foodwellalliance.org website. You're going to see links on the front page that will take you to our garden grants page. Also there at the top of our website, you're going to see a drop down for the community garden resources that will also take you to the garden grant information. But going through our website is where you're going to get to a lot of the certainly helpful information like we're covering today, as well as what's going to actually get you into the application system. So if you are considering applying for the garden grant, just know that all of our applications are accepted through the online grant system. If you have any specific technical questions related to using that grant system, to accessing it, please feel free to reach out to me. We've used that system for a number of years now. We've found it to be, pretty intuitive, pretty user-friendly, and accessible. And, we don't want that to be any sort of hindrance to anybody. I want to make a very clear kind of distinction here. We have these two categories of the grant: garden improvement grant and the garden forward grant. And any applicant is able to complete the application to be considered under both categories. So I think that's important, and we don't want that to be confusing. But what that means is that there's certainly going to be gardens that only want a $1,500 grant. They don't need, or they don't want a larger $10,000 grant, and they're able to complete the application in the system only for that $1,500 garden improvement grant. Now, what we're also kind of offering is that a garden can absolutely apply under both categories. Then if they, for example, do not receive the $10,000 Garden Forward grant, they could still be in the running to receive the smaller $1,500 grant. So as you're thinking kind of through your strategy for applying, just know that any garden is eligible to apply and be considered under both of those categories of support. And applications are due, once again, November 13th by midnight. So as you get into our website, you're going to be able to review a lot of helpful information, and then eventually click on the Apply Now, Get Started Now button that's going to take you to our online grant system. This is just a kind of screenshot of what it looks like to get into that system. If you are a first-time user, you're going to be creating a new account. Of course, if you are an existing user who hasn't logged in for a minute, feel free to use that forgot your password to do a reset. This is one important thing I want to say about accessing the system. If you're a new user, as you're setting up your profile, it is going to ask you for a tax ID number. Now, we acknowledge that not every community garden has its own tax ID number, and that's perfectly fine. Basically, what we instruct folks to do, if your garden does not have a tax ID number, just go ahead and enter all zeros to go ahead and get through that initial account setup phase. So once again, for the tax ID field, as you're setting up a new account, if you do not have a tax ID number, go ahead and just enter all zeros. That'll be fine, and that will allow you to get on into the system. This is just a little quick snapshot of kind of what it looks like once you'll get into the actual application. It is a pretty standard kind of form functionality website. So there is absolutely on our website a PDF of the full application, so you can look at a PDF version of it, before getting into it. So I want to talk very briefly about a fiscal sponsor. We're going to review a little bit of information here and then just get into some Q&A. So thanks for hanging tough with us. A fiscal sponsor is essentially the organization that is going to receive the grant funds in the event that your community garden is not set up to receive grant funds itself. So I guess the question to ask yourself related to a fiscal sponsor, what is it? Do I need one? You can ask yourself, if I'm awarded the community garden grant, who is going to actually receive the funds? We can't write a grant check to an individual. So certainly some community gardens are set up with their own bank accounts or are, directly operated or run by an existing and, nonprofit organization. Those instances, the community garden grant recipient would be able to receive the funds. But if your garden is not set up with its own, own bank account or as its own entity itself, then you'll need to name a fiscal sponsor who will receive the community garden grant funds if you're awarded, and then disperse those funds to you on behalf of the garden. We encourage folks, if you are thinking that, I do actually need somebody to serve as a fiscal sponsor, where do I go? Who do I need to talk to? I think some examples that we see are existing organizations in the same community as the community garden that work with the community garden, that have a relationship that could serve as, the recipient of those funds. We've seen county parks and recs departments or city agencies that have served as tax exempt organizations, as well as just some other other nonprofit organizations that are in some way maybe affiliated with the community garden. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. What we do ask, if you are in a situation where you're going to need to name a fiscal sponsor within the application, we go ahead and ask you to complete this fiscal sponsor agreement form, so that on the front end of the application process, you've already identified that fiscal sponsor who would receive the funds in the event that your garden is awarded. So a few little just application tips I want to kind of get into. Really we ask that you use this application to help us get to know your community garden. Be clear about your intent for using the community garden grant, specifically to how it connects to and will help you address those top needs that you're facing at your garden. Also, we hope that you'll be realistic and clear in your request. Don't just say we need $1,500 worth of material for the garden. Break that down. There is a budget section of the application for you to kind of list out a simple budget for how the funds would be used. Obviously, on the $10,000 Garden Forward grant, we're asking a little bit more about capacity and project management for those larger grants. So we want the garden to elaborate a little bit on how it sees itself implementing the use of these funds. Now, a couple of things about how we evaluate and make the decisions around these community garden grants. We definitely absolutely think of kind of two layers of evaluation. Certainly evaluation of the application itself, understanding that the garden is in fact an eligible and existing community garden. But then we also, in addition to the questions in that application form, we do apply some considerations around, are we serving, a broad and diverse range of community gardens across the Metro Atlanta area? So we're looking in the application for, how does the applicant, convincingly explain about how the garden builds community and is a part of where it's located. We're looking for, if the applicant conveys a good understanding of what, their definition of success will look like for implementing and using the garden grant. And of course, once again, making sure that proposed project or the request is realistic and matches up, to the opportunity that we're offering. So after after a garden applicant has made a good and clear case for how the grant will support the garden itself, we're looking at some additional kind of considerations. At Foodwell Alliance, we're interested in making sure that we're reaching gardens located across our 5-county area. We're looking at, are we able to, meet the needs of first-time applicants, as well as, some past recipients with addressing, some ongoing or additional needs. We're looking at, is the garden in fact ready for a grant? On top of just eligibility, are there other Foodwell Alliance resources that we offer or other resources out there that might be a better fit for a particular garden, at a particular time? And then, yeah, absolutely, in allocating these resources to gardens, are we considering to make sure that we are allocating those resources to communities, to parts of the Metro Atlanta area that have traditionally been denied access or had less opportunity to some institutional, resources. So in some cases, we do say no to a garden. Saying no to the grant does not mean that you are not doing amazing and awesome work as a garden. We like to make that clear up front. But like I said, there are a few reasons that we do say no. Are there other forms of support that are a better fit
at the stage of the community garden that you currently find yourselves in. We certainly need to apply a little bit of critical understanding to like the use of those funds. Does it make sense in comparison to other requests? As an example, I would understand absolutely why a community garden might want its own, drone, for example. But is that in fact a good, use of the funds, especially compared to, potentially other applicants in the applicant pool? Also we look at, if an applicant is a past recipient, can we distribute the love a little bit? Can we make sure that we are targeting, other applicants that might be first-time applicants that haven't accessed some of this support before? And also, in thinking through some of the garden applicants, a garden with its own, relatively large operating budget, possibly in a more affluent part of the Metro Atlanta area with lots of active members, with a long history, strong partnerships, that might be better at accessing some of its own resources. We might compare that to a garden that might not have found this specific opportunity itself, and also might not necessarily have access to some other forms of financial support or other resources that it can turn to. So we kind of certainly think through, as we're doing our evaluation process, we're kind of thinking through all of these elements together. We do utilize an external review committee that is made up of past community garden grant recipient leaders. We're in the process of forming that right now. We do think that's an important part for our own process, to absolutely build in some components of transparency and equity into our process. So that's something we're excited about as well, because it also just lends itself to a neat opportunity for community garden leader networking. So that's something we're excited about as well. As we get into some question and answer, as we move on to addressing some of the questions that have been put into the question and answer functionality, I'm going to go ahead and put out this little community garden grant checklist. So these are things that if you have not started, start on them today. November 13th is our application deadline. So these are things you can be doing right now to get an application in by that deadline, that is meaningful, that's well thought out, that is absolutely aligned with matching up this grant opportunity to helping address your needs in the garden. So register in the online grant system. Go ahead and get in there, get familiar with the application questions. Of course, registering in that system is kind of step number one. Go ahead and start now. If y'all haven't today, get with your garden members, discuss the garden needs, current challenges, and how these grant opportunities, specifically these two different categories, can help address those needs. So that will include, of course, deciding if you're going to be applying for only the garden improvement grant, only the garden forward grant, or if you want to go ahead and be in consideration for or in the running for both of those. If applicable, go ahead and identify a garden's fiscal sponsor. Go ahead and start having conversations with organizations. And if you do have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. And of course, submit your application today. So go ahead and get on our website, start getting familiar with the material if you are not already. We hope to see an application from you, and we hope you'll certainly reach out over the coming weeks as you're putting that application together. If you do have any additional questions, you can reach me, bobby@foodwellalliance.org. And I'm going to get into a few questions here. Once again, thanks so much for being a part of the webinar today. And let's get into some questions here. So one question: where does Food Well Alliance get its funding? So We have over the years since our founding in 2015 diversified our own income and funding streams as an organization, but still the bulk of our budget does come from the James M. Cox Foundation. The Cox Foundation, based here in Atlanta, attached to the Cox family and Cox Enterprises, is where the bulk of our funding comes from, specifically for some of these grant making activities. So a question around how much admin costs can be built into a budget and what can be included. So the community garden grants are not set up and are not specifically designed to be used for programming costs related to the community to a community garden. So we typically like to keep this grant focused on infrastructure, materials, supplies, but not on, for example, salaries for or wages or salaries for a community garden leader, or for somebody who's doing some sort of kind of ongoing maintenance at the garden. But absolutely, you could build into the budget, some funding that would be going towards, implementation of the community garden infrastructure project. So what I mean by that is, if you need to, install an electrical line to upgrade lighting at the garden, that could be something that's going to enhance security, at the garden, and that's an example of an infrastructure project. Now, you could include into that budget absolutely some costs associated for having that electrical work completed. But in general, the funds are not intended to be used for paying for some sort of ongoing operational cost at the garden. So once again, just as a reminder, a garden can apply for and be considered under both of those new categories of grants. Once again, just a reminder, the 5-county metro Atlanta area that we serve and that the garden must be located in is Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, Clayton, and Gwinnett. Great. Let's see. So question once again about that tax ID number. Once again, the system itself, as you're registering in the system, will ask you for a tax ID number. And if your garden does not have a tax ID number, or your organization that operates the community garden does not have a tax ID number, you can use just all zeros for accessing that. So a question about list of past awardees. We do have on our website just a list of the past garden grant recipients. So it's a bunch of them located in all corners of the 5-county metro Atlanta area. So definitely invite you to take a look at that whenever you get a chance. So a question here about follow-up on use of the funds. Just a reminder, we do have that project report component as kind of one of the follow-ups specific to the community garden grant applicant and recipient. And then the question around, how does Foodwell Alliance stay involved with the community garden post-grant? That's a great question. I think, what I really like to communicate is that, over the years, Foodwell Alliance has really implemented a lot of different forms of community garden support. Maybe early on, we were kind of known just as offering grants, but today we are operating what we call a full-on resource center for farms and community gardens. So, on the community garden side, I mentioned some of those other resources we offer around volunteer support, around ongoing workshops and educations. educational opportunities. Those are just some of the ways that we, consider our kind of support to and involvement with these community garden spaces as kind of an ongoing thing. That's not just the grant, but if a garden is having some technical issues with horticultural topics specific to growing food, or things that are happening in the garden, some of our programming that we offer, like our Plant, Eat, Repeat series, can help with the tips and tricks of actual growing food. Ways we're involved also includes some of the community garden leadership development through what's called the Growing Communities workshop series, done in collaboration with the American Community Gardening Association. That happened May, July, and August of this year, as well as just like our ongoing volunteer support to help gardens, stay on top of their work. So it is, we like to think of our resource center as offering a lot of different types of resources, many of which are staying active throughout the year. A question, could funding from the Garden Forward grant be used for solar? That's neat. I love it. Sounds like could be a really neat potential project. Certainly there are garden spaces that have power needs. Implementing some sort of solar component could be a really neat way to do that. And that would be absolutely a good, infrastructure project. Would love to hear more, and would love to see an application related to that. Great. Couple questions here that are very, very specific to a specific space or garden. Definitely making a note of those. We'll be happy to follow up and reach out to you. If there are any more questions, feel free to put those in here in the next few moments or so. And once again, just want to say thanks so much for joining us today. Like I said, this opportunity, we do try to make it available to and have reached a wide variety of types of community gardens, big and small, ones that have been around for many years, ones that are new. So we're really excited about continuing with this opportunity, as well as folding in this new larger grant opportunity for a couple gardens that are ready to take on a new project, are ready to move forward, move their garden forward in supporting community and growing food in community. So really excited to hear from y'all about what needs exist out there. Excellent, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, my name is Bobby Farmer. My address, email address at Foodwell is bobby@foodwellalliance.org. Look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions, and we'll absolutely be looking forward to communicating and being in touch with you over the application window and cycle and process for this grant opportunity, but also just look forward to learning more about your community gardens. We hope you'll plug in to Foodwell Alliance in whatever way makes most sense for you. We're looking forward to the opportunity, of course, to get to know new folks, but also continue serving folks that we've been in relationship with. So hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday. Keep those plants watered. They'll be fine. Plants are resilient. They'll make it through these next cool couple of days, and then we'll be back in the 70s. Hope you all have a great fall growing season, and look forward to learning more about your work as community gardeners. Thank you so much.